UFO researcher, author, and lecturer Peter Robbins tells us about the Rendlesham Forest incident, also known as Britain's Roswell. Plus, he talks about his alien abduction research with the late Budd Hopkins. That and the latest news right here on Spacing Out.
Greetings everyone and welcome to Spacing Out. I'm Jason McClellan.
And I'm Maureen Ellsbury.
We have a great show for you today. We'll be talking with Peter Robbins later in the show, but first we want to give you something.
We have movie tickets to give away. If you're in the Phoenix area and you want to see the new movie, Men in Black 3, we have a bunch of tickets to give away for a Thursday, May 24th showing. All you have to do is go to Facebook and like the Open Minds magazine page, like the Spacing Out page, then send us an email at missioncontrol@spacingout.tv. Then we'll send you a link where you can print out your pair of movie tickets.
Maureen and I are checking out the advanced screening of this movie and we'll give you our review next week. In UFO news this week, a strange object appeared in NASA footage on May 3rd, leading some to conclude that an alien spacecraft was hanging out by the sun. This comes just 2 weeks after a similar object appeared near the sun in footage captured by NASA's Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, SOHO, on April 24th.
As we reported a couple weeks ago, the Naval Research Laboratory, or NRL, analyzes data from SOHO's camera. The NRL explained that the April 24th UFO was simply a camera glitch caused by cosmic rays. This new UFO is similar in appearance to the object captured on April 24th. And with the similarities, it is possible that the new UFO is also a result of cosmic rays.
But an added element to this new UFO spotting has at least one person suggesting a NASA cover-up. Gizmodo UK explains, quote, "A day after the UFO was captured, NASA shut down the probe's feed because it oh so conveniently went into emergency sun reacquisition mode." Fox News reported NASA's official response to this, saying, "SOHO went into emergency sun reacquisition mode on Friday, May 4th, 2012, caused by a false trigger of the coarse sun pointing attitude anomaly detector. We are working on the recovery of the spacecraft to normal mode."
YouTube user Rob19791 is credited with spotting the most recent solar UFO. In his video of the object, he alleges that NASA took SOHO offline to prevent anyone else from seeing the UFOs. He suggests it's too much of a coincidence. I find on the 3rd of May 2012, and they break their telescope the following day.
It's kind of interesting. I mean, we talked about this, you know, with the first one, the April 24th, how interesting the object looks. It looks like a defined structure.
Right.
And that's the same with this new one. It looks kind of like the one we saw before, this kind of elongated object. It looks like a craft, but based on what the NRL says, this stuff happens in a lot of space photos.
Right, right. And, you know, it's probably not as big of a conspiracy as people are letting on, but
it's a possibility, but not likely, and would like to point out that the SOHO cameras are back online now. So.
Yeah. So we'll see if any more glitches come up from now on, I guess.
Yes, we will. On May 11th, NBC affiliate KSEE24 in Fresno, California, broadcast a video recorded by Kevin Williams of GoNewsNow.tv that shows an unidentified object in the sky.
The witness recorded this video on the morning of Friday, May 11th in northwest Fresno at approximately 10:45 a.m. He describes the object as being in the upper atmosphere, and it remained motionless for 30 minutes while he observed it. The UFO has no identifiable shape and simply appears to be a bright light in the sky.
Then, at approximately 8 p.m. that same day, KSEE24 photojournalist Richard Morales captured video of a similar-looking shiny object slowly moving through the sky. In this video, people in the background speculate that the object could possibly be a large mylar balloon drifting in the wind.
It is unclear if the object in these two videos are related. According to witness testimony regarding the first video, it is unlikely that the UFO in the video is a Mylar balloon because the object remained in a fixed position for 30 minutes, rather than drifting like a balloon in the second video.
Open Minds video journalist Michael Klein recently assembled a video story about Steve Pierce, one of the witnesses to the famous 1975 Travis Walton alien abduction incident.
So this video features an exclusive interview with Pierce, who tells of his trials and tribulations following the Walton event. He also alleges that after his recent appearance at the International UFO Congress in February, he was approached by an unnamed source who offered him money to change his story. Pierce says he refused this offer, as he has done in the past, and remains unwavering in his recollection of the terrifying event in '75.
You can watch this video on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/openmindstv or simply at openminds.tv.
In space news, a project plans to use Twitter to send messages to extraterrestrials.
Scott Kjeldahl and Nathaniel Stern are the men behind the Tweets in Space experimental art project. Mashable.com explains that, quote, the pair plans to collect and transmit all tweets bearing the Tweets in Space hashtag to GJ667, capital C, little c, to inform extraterrestrial beings of our culture and society, end quote. The tweets will also reportedly be archived on a website.
To achieve their goal, Kjeldahl and Stern plan to borrow, build, or upgrade a communication system to beam the messages into space. To make this happen, the team is seeking donations through the fundraising platform Rocket Hub.
GJ667, capital C, little c, was detected by NASA's Kepler Space Telescope and confirmed as a planet earlier this year. Scientists believe the newly discovered world to be the best candidate for a planet capable of supporting life.
New research suggests that we may have an undiscovered planet out there in our own solar system.
National Geographic explains that, according to astronomer Rodney Gomes from the National Observatory of Brazil in Rio de Janeiro, this potential planet is, quote, too far out to be easily spotted by telescopes, but researchers suspect a planet could be hiding out there because something is, quote, disturbing the orbits of so-called Kuiper belt objects.
Kuiper belt objects are small icy bodies that lie beyond the orbit of Neptune. An example of one of these objects is the former planet Pluto, one of the largest Kuiper belt objects.
Poor Pluto. Based on the observation, Gomes theorizes that Mars or a Neptune-sized planet could account for the disturbed orbits of these objects. But because the planet could be very dim and because scientists have no idea where to point their telescopes, finding this potential planet won't be easy and probably won't happen anytime soon.
Probably not. On Thursday, May 10th, a partnership was announced between private space company SpaceX and Bigelow Aerospace.
Las Vegas-based Bigelow Aerospace has developed orbiting habitats, basically hotels in space. The company's CEO is hotel tycoon Robert Bigelow, who owns the Budget Suites of America hotel chain and has been on a mission to open a hotel in space.
According to Space.com, Bigelow builds large, expandable space habitats. The company plans to link up at least 2 of its BA330 modules, each of which provides about 11,650 cubic feet of usable volume to create private space stations.
SpaceX, a company that already has contracts with NASA to fly supplies to the International Space Station, is hoping to one day fly NASA astronauts to the ISS. This new partnership between SpaceX and Bigelow Aerospace aims to launch customers aboard SpaceX's Dragon capsule and Falcon 9 rockets to one of Bigelow's orbiting habitats. No word yet regarding a timetable, but the two companies will reportedly be launching a marketing campaign soon to garner interest from an international market.
This week's audience submission comes to us from Tim Brosnan from Greenville, South Carolina.
Hi Jason, hi Maureen. My name is Tim. I'm in Greenville, South Carolina, and congratulations on your new program. I'm really looking forward to seeing where you go with it. Jason, I enjoyed your interview with Bryce Zabel, especially your exchange with him about the dismissive treatment of this topic by the American mainstream media. And it reminded me of a column that I used to write for Technorati.com. The name of that column was Pimp My Reality. I was writing that up until about 2010. And I noticed repeatedly how well China's People's Daily covers UFO news. very professionally, very straightforward about it. They would ask questions, report facts. They weren't including obligatory quotes from naysayers and debunkers. And I tried a couple of times to get interviews with writers at People's Daily, people whose bylines appeared on some of these UFO stories that I was reading, and I couldn't even get them to reply to my emails. So I'm wondering if open minds might be able to pull some strings or throw some weight around and find somebody who can speak authoritatively about the newsroom philosophy at China's People's Daily regarding UFO news. And remember, this is the official news organ of the Communist Party in China, and they are scooping the hell out of the American mainstream media on the subject of UFOs. And if you can do that, you would be my hero. Guys, come on. We're trying to keep this area clear. I'm sorry. What are you going to do? We don't have any control over that up here. Yeah. All right. Well, keep up the good work.
Thanks for your submission, Tim. You make a great point about the incredible coverage by China's People's Daily of UFO-related stories. I certainly recall a few UFO stories from the past couple years that were covered very professionally by this paper, specifically ones that mentioned planetary astronomer Wang Sichao of the Chinese Academy of Sciences Purple Mountain Observatory, where he is quite active in UFO investigations, and they cite him and quote him in a lot of their stories. And I haven't seen anything mentioning him for a while, but to your point, we have actually tried to reach out to Wang Sichao because we would love to get an interview with him.
Multiple times.
We've been unsuccessful as you have in your efforts, but it's something we will certainly continue.
Now let's talk with Peter Robbins.
Well, we are very happy to be joined by our dear friend Peter Robbins today. Peter, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
I'm glad to, Jason. It's great to be here.
Fantastic. Well, we'd just like to talk with you about a couple of issues today. You are a researcher and a wise man on a many number of topics. And I'm stroking your ego a bit here, and I'm happy to. But I'd like for you researched the incident known as the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident. Now, for our audience, I think most of our audience is familiar with the case, but for those who aren't, would you mind giving us a brief overview of what the Rendlesham Forest incident is?
Rendlesham Forest UFO incident is far and away Great Britain's best known and best documented UFO incident. It's sometimes referred to in the UK and Europe and sometimes in the States as England's Roswell, only because it's the best known incident, not because of a crash, so to say. And it occurred, is actually a series of events that occurred on 3 consecutive nights in late December 1980 between Christmas and New Year's. The events varied from sightings of unknowns coming in over RAF Bentwaters, the base where most of the men involved were stationed. And this was it's now decommissioned since the early 90s, but was leased to the Americans from World War II on. It's considered one of a pair of sister bases. 6 miles away we have RAF Woodbridge, still an active RAF base. And the events varied from lights in the night sky to unknowns coming in over the weapons storage area and shining beams of light down into the area. You could actually see the beams going down to the ground, bearing in mind that it was a lot of moisture in the air, and it would have caught on about 1 billion little, bits of moisture, to landings in the Rendlesham Forest surrounding the Twin Base complex that are extremely well documented, where these machines, for lack of a more descriptive term, came in. They tore out areas of forest canopy. They scraped up against trees, ripping off bark. They left impressions in the soil. The Ministry of Defense itself has confirmed that the minute, normally expected background traces of beta and gamma radiation were in excess of 10 times that in the impressions in the soil and where these devices rubbed up against the trees or other organic material. On the first night, two Air Force police officers saw a light go down in the woods. They went out to investigate and were confronted with a machine of undetermined origin, triangular and tapering up, I believe about 7 feet on each side. The surface had the appearance of black glass. It had hieroglyphics on it, or markings that one of the men noted in his field notebook. The men involved on that night have missing time. There was electronic disturbance in the air. And it all culminated on, it also involved the deputy base commander, who skeptically had gone out into the woods with a team of Air Force personnel to debunk the event after hearing that they were back, and in fact observed a UFO come in very closely over their heads and shine down a beam of light to their feet, removing any skepticism for him. On the final note, Air Force personnel, including my co-author, Larry Warren, who at the time was an Air Force security cop, were taken off of their postings. Very intense time during the Cold War, concern about a potential conflict with the Russians during that week, and brought out to a farmer's field called Capel Green, only about a mile from the sister base RAF Woodbridge, where they were ordered to surround a self-illuminated ground fog, like a large oval of fog that was glowing. There was no ambient light. The large gas-operated lights that they had brought out from the motor pool, all of which had been checked out, refused to operate. And at a certain point, they observed a small red light coming in from the direction of the North Sea, about 5 or 6 miles away, and watched, I'm sure, in amazement as it came in directly over the field, directly over the fog, exploded with magnesium brightness, and when their eyes readjusted to the light, a much larger machine of undetermined origin sat there. 3 beings, or 3 humanoid-looking beings, ultimately became part of this picture. There was a face-off with a ranking officer on the base. The men were debriefed the next day in a session that I would characterize as disinformation, which, let's remember, is not a lie as much as it is a very skillful blend of truth, fiction, confabulation to produce a certain result, to keep these men quiet. He and others, not long after this, were taken against their will, chemically subdued, held in a facility below the base, and subjected to programming, which some of these men are still trying to sort out to this day. That is the most capsule version of the events, and due to the fact that after securing a fully honorable discharge from the United States Air Force, my co-author became the whistleblower, went forward, gave testimony that resulted in a Freedom of Information Act action that released a report written by the deputy base commander, again the one who was involved as a witness, which was somewhat redacted, compressed, minimized, but confirmed the reality of the event. And that report ultimately made its way to the largest tabloid in England, the News of the World, which was closed earlier this year in that Rupert Murdoch-related scandal. The story exploded on their front pages in October 1983 and has been in the public realm ever since.
Now, you mentioned your co-author, Larry Warren. What is the name of the book that you wrote?
Our book is called Left at East Gate, a first-hand account of the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident, its cover-up and investigation. And I'm very proud of the book. It was republished on the 25th anniversary of the event in an expanded, and that would have been in 2005, in an expanded, updated edition by Cosmo Press in New York.
And for people who want to know more about this, you're actually going to be speaking about this event at a couple of upcoming events, right? You're going to be in Arizona, and you're also going to be at an event in England?
I am, and very much looking forward to both. On the 17th of June, there's going to be a absolutely terrific more 12-hour conference. It's a all-day Sunday event, and will feature Timothy Good, Alan Godfrey, the legendary British police officer involved in a remarkable UFO event. Gary Hazeltine, a highly respected British police detective involved in setting up a terrific police UFO database, who also quite a knowledgeable person on Rendlesham. Myself, former United States Air Force Captain Robert Salas, who was involved in the Malmstrom Air Force Base event, and several other fine speakers. Information about that can be found at Rendlesham UFO. I think it's RendleshamUFO.com or RendleshamUFOconference.com. And I hope that anyone listening to this who can go will. And then in mid-July, I will be back in your wonderful state. And I understand the temperatures will be about 135 at the time. I'm looking forward to it. To speak for Phoenix MUFON and Sedona MUFON. And all that information will be posted on the Phoenix MUFON website. I think it's 17th and 18th or something like that.
We'll post all that information on openminds.tv too.
Well, there we go. Okay. So, yeah, and I'll also be speaking about the same subject, which is the real evidence that we have about the reality of Rendlesham, and discussing newer aspects and claims and counterclaims and some of the controversies that have reignited around this seminally important UFO event.
And there are certainly plenty of those controversies that you're speaking about. Well, the Rendlesham event sounds extremely fascinating, and if you have any room in your suitcase, I would love to go with you.
I'd love to take you. I'm delighted in that any extra room is now taken up because I've been invited to give several talks in France the week before. Wow. I regret that my mother always taught me to bring house gifts, and so that small spot that we could have packed you into is now full.
Yeah, I don't require much space, but it sounds like you're already taking that up.
I know. Just punch some holes in it. I'll be fine.
He's smaller than he looks on camera.
That's right.
All right.
Well, Peter, as I mentioned at the beginning of our interview, you are a wise man, and you have explored many different areas in this interesting field in which we work. And one of those that you've spent some time researching is the alien abduction phenomena. And you had the pleasure of working very closely with a pioneer in the field of research into alien abduction, and that is Budd Hopkins. And so what was your time like working with Budd Hopkins and exploring this really strange area?
Very exciting. It was very much a privilege and often extremely unnerving. Alien abduction, for many people in our culture, has become kind of a catchphrase for dysfunctional thinking or being some kind of goofy believer or a science fiction person that thinks that such a thing could possibly happen. I met Budd the year before. I met Budd in 1976 as a painter. Who was also involved in UFOs and had been for a year longer than I had. We became friends, began to discuss this situation, but the thing that brought me into it was my sister Helen's abduction experiences, which she first told me about the year before, in 1975, which totally changed my life, and I think contributed more to my career path, jumping the tracks and doing what we do now, essentially full-time, rather than being a painter, which was what I had always dreamt of being. And I worked with Budd in the capacity of a studio assistant, a gopher, and ultimately as his assistant, on and off for more than 20 of the 35 years that we were friends. During that time, I met with, observed, spent time with, sat in on hypnotic regressions with, met family members of, saw physical evidences relating to hundreds of individuals who alleged that they had had these experiences happen in their lives. And at a certain point, based on evidences that you could actually present in court if courts of law adjudicated such matters, I lost the luxury of disbelief. It's not that I'm now just a gaga believer and approach every allegation of somebody saying this happened to me, as a blind acceptance. I continue to go into every investigation, whether it's a prolonged one or a more truncated one of sitting with somebody quietly that I meet at a conference who wants to talk to me about their memories or experiences or physical evidences that they may have, with the same skepticism that I'd apply to any investigation. However, it's real and it happens. Because of you guys and John Rao and the Open Minds organization, I had one of the great privileges of my life in ufology in February when I was asked to present my reminiscences of working with Budd and my observations of him as a man, a ufologist, an author, an artist, a true pioneer, and a friend. He was not just a great guy, he was a great man. And I know that there will come a time in history, if we don't all self-immolate in December 22nd or 21st, I guess, is what we're looking toward for the Earth, right? I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll somehow go beyond it, though. That he will be judged by history as a true pioneer in a field that is as important as any area of study that humanity has ever been caught up in. It is still very much an area of study, of research in its infancy, if you want to look at it as having first really kicked in the 70s, and the Betty and Barney Hill case from 1961 being the first really important case that we now acknowledge as fully authentic. So it was wonderful. And even at its darkest or most depressing or most anxiety-provoking, there was never a moment in working with Budd where I didn't appreciate that I was involved in some small way as a cog in a much bigger wheel to be doing something of historical importance. And I will always be grateful for the time I got to spend with him. And but to cancer last August at AG. And I guess I'm one of the lucky ones because I got to spend so much time with him and have an awful lot of fun in between all of the serious stuff.
Yeah, and so with Budd's passing last year, Budd had formed the Intruders Foundation, which was abduction research group. Can you tell us a little bit about, are there plans to have that continue?
Great question, Maureen. Yes, I think it was in '91. Don't hold me to it. I'll double check that Budd essentially created this nonprofit organization to educate people on the reality of this phenomenon and to be available as a support mechanism to people who had been through it. And it really is a remarkable group. For many years, we've had usually 2/3 of the year seminar series in New York City and Midtown Manhattan, where we bring in top speakers working out of the ARE space, which we lease on those occasions, the Edgar Cayce Research Organization. We have a terrific website that is in process of being revamped right now, intrudersfoundation.org. And after Budd's passing, those of us on his advisory board met and are now in the slow process of recreating the organization. Our wonderful webmaster, John Horton, suffered a bypass surgery some months back, and we send our best wishes to him. He seems to be making a wonderful full recovery. We love the guy. But it's slow going, and because Budd was so extraordinarily dynamic and because it was an organization that centered around his work rather than around us. It's an interesting challenge both organizationally and creatively to remake it in kind of a new form. But I invite people to visit the site for what it is right now and know that we will be back up and running, hopefully by the end of this year.
And Peter, I know I've told you this in person, but I want to say it again. Your presentation in February at the International UFO Congress was terrific. It was a very, very wonderful tribute to Budd Hopkins. And for anyone who's interested, we do have Peter's presentation available on DVD, as well as all the other presentations from the International UFO Congress. Those are all at openminds.tv. You can go there, check those out. But your presentation at the Congress this year was really, really good, and it was moving.
Thank you. I'm proud of my abilities as a presenter and a researcher, investigator, but when you folks had invited me to speak, I submitted a list of about 10 topics that I was ready to go on, and this was the one that you chose. And I approached it with some trepidation. The idea of talking about your dead friend, and to be blunt, professionally receiving a fee for it, left me with very mixed feelings. But I thought how Budd would feel about my doing that, and that I had to set the bar very high for myself. So you gave me an opportunity to do something that ultimately I realized I did a good job on. I had about 150 illustrations, which gave you an idea of him as the guy that we knew in the field, the great UFO author, speaker, investigator, researcher, but Budd as a human being, his wonderful artwork, where he lived, and it was a real privilege. So you're welcome, and thank you, you guys and John and the rest of the folks at Open Minds, for giving me one of the great opportunities I've ever had in my life as a public speaker.
It's always a pleasure to speak with you and listen to you speak, Peter. I agree with your comments. I do 100% think you are a great speaker, and it's something you do well as a speaker is portray emotion. And when you are passionate about something, I feel that passion. So credit to you as a speaker. I really do enjoy listening to you speak.
Thank you. I'll have that $5 in the mail to you tomorrow.
You weren't supposed to say that.
Yeah. So we'll make sure to have you in studio here when you're coming into town in June, July? July. So we'll have you in, and we'll be able to get more in-depth on all these topics. And
absolutely, we definitely want to have you in. We'll talk to you, in a couple months, because there are some additional pieces of evidence that you alluded to related to the Rendlesham incident that are going to be coming out. So we'd love to hear from you on that. And I think we're going to have you on another show to get more in depth about the abduction phenomenon. I'd love to talk to you about that.
I'd be honored to. I really would. And for those folks who are watching this but are either unfamiliar with or don't subscribe to Open Minds magazine, and I say this simply because it's true, it is the best UFO-related publication for the general public, as opposed to a few of the more scholarly, more esoteric publications in the field, that is in the English language, bar none. And some time back, I guess it was a year or so ago, I was invited to write an introductory article on the abduction phenomena. I don't remember the issue, but all those back issues, like all of your great talks on DVD, are available from your website. And anybody that's seriously interested in this subject, I'll leave you with one thought. The Internet is marvelous. It's overwhelming in terms of the knowledge that it holds, but it's a double-edged sword. And in areas like UFO investigation, there's so much specious nonsense on it. I encourage anyone who is serious about the subject, whether you're an ongoing student of years or a novice, to begin to build an actual library of books, out-of-print books, in-print books, and back issues of publications like Open Minds. It's going to be part of your research tools, and again, it's a first-rate publication. I look forward to my next issue, and yeah, look forward to seeing you guys in July and picking up where we've left off today. And thanks so much for having me on the show.
Thanks for the kind words, and you can hold on to that $5. I think we're even now.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, Peter. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Take care.
Bye.
That's it for this episode of Spacing Out.
Join us again next week for our discussion with Huffington Post journalist Lee Spiegel about the search for extraterrestrial life and space robots. We'll see you in the future.